Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the second story from chapter 35 from the Road to Latin textbook. Now this story is called De Tarpeia, and it focuses on a really famous story about this woman Tarpeia and why there's a spot in Rome today called the Tarpeian Rock. So it's another kind of founding myth, sort of the early beginnings of Rome, and it continues the story of Romulus taking the Sabine women and sort of the war that comes from that. Before we dive in though, like I always tell you, if you want to see more resources on this chapter, or see the story in a different way, feel free to go to Nova Latin, take a look. You'll find a bunch of stuff there, grammar notes, videos, all these things. Since this is the second story from chapter 35, I'm going to assume at this point that you're pretty good at that, right? If you need a touch up and a refresher on your vocab, of course, do it. If you haven't mastered it yet, it's going to be very difficult for you because it's just hard to read Latin if you don't know what the words mean. So make sure you brush up on the vocab again if you're really confident. Review the grammar if you need to. All the notes are there on my site. Take a look and just make sure you feel really good about it, because being the second story, again, this is going to be a good chance to work on the grammar from chapter 35, which is all about participles, right? You'll see them in action, in context, and it'll help you learn them, okay? Like I always tell you, though, another thing you want to do, read this story aloud, find a partner in class, someone you can read to, so you can work on your speaking, your pronunciation, and then they can read it back to you and you can work on your listening skills. You never want to shut those off. That's the best way to learn a language. Incorporate all those different skills. You don't want to just read this in your head. You can learn Latin that way, but not as fast, and it probably won't be as good. The other thing I'd suggest you do is use the read and reread method. So as you're working your way through this, read through the story once, mark down any words you don't understand, any grammar, any sentences that are tricky, write them all down, and then go back once you've done your full read and try to figure it out. The vocab is always the easiest. You can look it up in a dictionary, right? You'll get on the right track. The grammar is probably a little trickier, but when you're doing sort of chapter stories, the tricky part is probably in the new grammar, right? Which will be participles, so you can look it up. If it's something different that you just don't understand, try to figure it out or watch this video, and you'll kind of get there. But once you've done that, you want to read through the story again a second, a third, a fourth time, as many as you need to, and you just keep repeating that process. And when you do that, the list where you're writing your problem areas should get smaller and smaller, and the goal is to eventually be able to read through this whole thing start to finish without needing any help at all, right? No vocab, no grammar. If you can do that and understand all, if not almost all of what's going on, you're in a really good place and you're ready to move on. Okay. So if you haven't done that yet, pause the video, go take care of all that. If you feel you're in a good place, continue on with the video and we'll work through the translation together. Okay. So story starts like this. You have Sabini insidiis Romuli incitati Roma fugerunt. Okay, so we're talking about the Sabini, the Sabines, right? So remember, at this point in the story, Romulus has just taken the Sabine women. So the Sabines, they fugerunt, they fled Roma from Rome, right? Remember, when you have the name of a city, you don't need the preposition there, the ablative, just is showing motion away from. So they fled from Rome, rather. Then you have incitati, there's your participle, right? It's a perfect passive participle. So you can translate it as having been incited or kind of urged on or riled up, however you want to do it. And again, because it's the perfect passive participle, you're looking for an ablative to tell you what kind of set them off, right? In this case, it's insidiis. So having been incited by the plots of Romulus, right? The sort of plans or tricks of Romulus, okay? So because of Romulus's actions, now they're all they're all riled up and they flee from the city, they run away, and they're going to come back. Then you have raptae virgines, quoque erant erratae, et libertatem Romulum oraverunt. Okay, so here we have the virgines, the maidens, right? The women that he stole. And they're described as raptae. Again, it's a perfect passive participle, right? It comes from rapio rapere, which means to seize or to take. So this is saying the maidens, right? The young girls, having been seized, raptae, right? There's your perfect passive participle. So having been seized or taken, they also were angry, right? They were erratae, and they oraverunt, they begged Romulum. Here you have the double accusative, so they begged Romulus libertatem for freedom, is kind of one way you can do that. So they begged Romulus for their freedom, is really what it's getting at. So they keep telling him to let them go, right? Because they're angry. Then you have sed Romulus eis libertatem non dated. So, but Romulus, right, King Romulus, non dated. He did not give, it's perfect tense, he didn't give libertatem, freedom, to them, eis, right, meaning to the women. So he doesn't set them free. Mox legati a patribus Sabinis ad Romulum misi sunt. So soon, legati, envoys or messengers, if you want to translate that, right? Like it's these messengers, misi sunt, they were sent. Now again, here you have misi, which technically is a fourth principal part, right? So at first glance, you might think it's a perfect passive participle, but it's going with the verb to be, which means it's not, right? When you put that fourth principal part with the verb to be, you're dealing with some version of passive voice, either perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect. Here you have sunt, so it's perfect tense, passive voice. So when you say legati misi sunt, you're saying the envoys were sent. So soon envoys were sent ad Romulum, to Romulus, by the patribus Sabinis, by the Sabine fathers, right? So all these men who lost their daughters, they send envoys, right, telling Romulus to give them back. Romulus eos domum misit. So Romulus sent misit, right? Perfect tense. He sent them. Eos is referring to the legati, the envoys, the messengers. He sent them domum, meaning he sent them home. So Romulus rejects these envoys, right? This is his big plan. He needs women. He's not going to give them back. Then you continue, and you have tum bellum longum et acre inter Romanos et Sabinos gestumas. So then a bellum longum et acre. So a bellum is a war, right? And it's described as longum et acre. So a long and fierce war, okay? Was waged, gestum est. Again, gestum is a fourth principal part, but it's going with the verb to be. So it's just perfect tense, passive voice. It's not a participle. So you just want to use this as a chance to make sure you can see that so you don't get confused, right? So the long and fierce war was waged between the Romanos, the Romans, and the Sabinos, the Sabines. So the Sabines have their envoys rejected and they declare war, right? So they're going to fight it out. Then you have multos annos, gentes pugnaban. So here we have the accusative, multos annos. It's talking about time, so this is duration of time. So for many years, you want to translate multos annos. So for many years, gentes pugnaban, the peoples were fighting, or they fought, right? The two peoples are the Romans and the Sabines, right? Then you have multa prolia extra muros urbis facta sunt. So multa prolia are many battles, right? So many battles, facta sunt. Again, it's perfect tense passive voice. Facta is not a participle. So many battles were waged, or were you might say made, right? Were fought is kind of one way to think of it. Extra muros urbis, beyond. Remember, extra means beyond, so outside of, or in this case, beyond is what works best. So beyond the muros urbis, right? The walls of the city. So all these battles are happening away from Rome, outside the walls of the city, or beyond the walls of the city. Okay. Then you have tandem tatius, qui erat potens rex Sabinorum, multos milites coigit et Roman iter fecit. So finally, or at last, so they have all these battles outside the city. Finally, Tatius, right, who was, qui erat, a potens rex, who was a powerful king, Sabinorum, of the Sabines. So you have the Sabine king, his name is Tatius. He coigit, he collected, it's perfect tense, he collected multos milites, many soldiers, and he iter fecit, he made a journey, or he traveled, Roma, to Rome. So he grabs a big army and he shows up at the actual city. So now they're not beyond the walls anymore. They are besieging Rome. Then it continues on. You have Romani Capitolium muniverant. Okay, so the Romans, they muniverant, they fortified, right, or they had fortified the Capitolium, the Capitoline Hill. So again, when you see Capitolium there, it's talking about the hill. You have seven hills of Rome. This is the Capitoline Hill. So this one they fortified, right, and they're getting ready for the siege. You have Tarpeio Principi Romano salus urbis tributa erat. So Tarpeio here is masculine. It's talking not about Tarpeia, the daughter we're going to meet in a little bit. This is Tarpeius, her father. And remember that makes sense if you've studied Roman names. Daughters are given the feminine form of the father's name. So he's Tarpeius, she's Tarpeia. Okay, so you just want to make sure you're paying attention to the gender here to keep track of who we're talking about. So if you backtrack a little bit, the main subject here is salus, the safety urbis of the city. Tributa erat means was assigned or had been assigned, right? It's pluperfect passive. So the safety of the city had been assigned to Tarpeius, right? Tarpeio, Principi Romano, right? A chief of the Romans, or a Roman chief, right? Chieftain, a Roman leader. So you have this man Tarpeius. He's sort of the captain of protecting the city at this point, the walls, okay? So the safety of the city was given to him, okay? Then you continue on. You have Eusfilia, Virgo audax erat Tarpeia. So his daughter, Eusfilia, she's described as a Virgo audax, a bold young woman, a bold maiden, you might say, was Tarpeia. Okay, so he has a daughter named Tarpeia. Ea in turi stans ornamenta aurea in sinistri sabinorum vide. So she, right, she's described as stans. Now there we have the ns ending, right? It comes from stos dare, which means to stand. The ns ending is very distinct. It's a present participle, nominative, singular. So it goes with ea, her or she. So you could say she standing in turi, on a turret, right? So she's up in a like a tower or turret of the wall, right? She's standing on the wall. So she, right, Tarpeia, standing on the wall. She weeded. She saw the ornamenta aurea, the golden like ornaments, jewelry, or bracelets, you might even say, right? Probably works best here. The golden decorations, maybe we'll say bracelets for the next line. So the golden decorations on the sinistris, on the arms of the Sabine, Sabinorum. Okay, so she looks out and she sees in their specifically their left arms, right? These golden or this golden jewelry. It catches her eye. So you're going to see the Sabines fight with golden jewelry on, and she notices it, right? And she's going to want it. Then it continues, and you have Tarpeia armilas aureas amavit et ornamentorum cupida munitiones clam reliquit. So Tarpeia, she amawit, she loved the armilas aureas, the golden bracelets, right? This is probably the better spot for bracelets. The golden bracelets, and now here we have cupida, desirous or desiring. So desiring of the ornamentorum, right? Of the ornaments, of the decorations. She secretly reliquit munitiones, right? She secretly left the munitiones here means like ramparts, right? It's talking about the defenses, right? The wall, the ramparts is kind of a good way to do it. So she sneaks out, okay, because she really wants these golden bracelets that the Sabine soldiers are wearing. Okay, then you have ad ducem Sabinorum cucure. So to the ducem Sabinorum is the leader of the Sabines, right? So to the Sabine leader, she ran, cucure, right? So she ran to him. Then you have a quote, and you have si mihi dabis ea quae milites tui in senistus gerunt, nocte portam urbis aperiam et milites tuos in urbem ducam. Okay, so she gives an offer. She says, if Dabis, if you will give, right, it's future tense, if you will give to me ea quae, those things which milites tui, your soldiers gerunt, are wearing in sinistris, on their left arms. Okay, she's talking about the jewelry. She says, if you will do this, right? So you can already say it's sort of an if-then construction. So if you will do this, then, right, nocte, at night, aperiam, I will open the portam urbis, the gate of the city. And ducam, I will lead milites tuos, your soldiers, in urbem, into the city. So Tarpeia is a traitor. That's what she's known for, right? She's so cupida, right, desirous or covetous of the gold that she offers up the city to the Sabine soldiers, right? So this is why Tarpeia is so famous. She is a very, very distinctly remembered as a traitor, right, who just wanted gold. Okay. Then the story continues on, and we're getting to the last paragraph here. So you have Tatius, muros opugnaturus cum gaudio eam audivet. So Tatius, right, the king of the Sabines, he's opugnaturus, about to. So here, real quick, the opugnaturus, the UR gives it away. It's a future participle. So we translate this as about to besiege, right? So, or assault, you might say. So about to assault the muros, the walls, right, meaning the walls of the city. He audiwit eam, he heard her, cum gaudia, with joy, right? So he heard this, you might even say, heard her, meaning her offer, with joy. So he's happy because he was about to go attacking the walls. Now he doesn't have to. Then you have, and again, remember you have that future participle there that sets this up. Then you have celerita Tarpeia intramuros urbis revenit. So quickly Tarpeia revenit, she went back inside the muros urbis, the walls of the city. So she returned quickly inside the walls of the city. So she goes back in and nobody knows the offer that she's made. Then you have media nocte, ipsa portam aperuit. So at midnight, right, media nocte, in the middle of the night, or at midnight, you might say, she opened the walls of the city. Okay, sorry, not the walls of the city. That's the previous line. She herself, ipsa, she herself opened the gate, the portam. Okay, so at midnight or in the middle of the night, she sneaks down and she opened up the gate to let the Sabines in. Then you have Tatius primus in Tarpeiam ornamenta postulantem non solum armilas sed etiam scutum jece. So Tatius the king, first, he he not only so non solum yekit, he threw, right? So he not only threw his armilas, his golden, right, armbands, his bracelets, but also his scutum, his shield. Okay, and he threw it in Tarpeam ornamenta postulantem. So into Tarpeia postulantem, there's your present participle. The nt gives it away, and it's accusative because it's describing Tarpeia. So into Tarpeia, desiring the decorations, right? So requesting, you might even say postulantem. She's requesting the jewelry, the ornamenta. So he throws to her his bracelet, and he also throws his shield at her. And we'll get in a second why he does this. Okay, so he chucks his shield at her. Then it continues on. Here's the last part of that of the story, the last part of the paragraph. You have eos milites quoque ornamenta et scuta jecerunt. So his soldiers also threw jecerunt, right? They threw their ornamenta et scuta, right? Their decorations and their shields. So not only does the king, right, Tatius chuck his bracelets and his shield at her, but all the soldiers start bombarding poor Tarpeia here, the traitor, with their shields as well. So you might be wondering why they do this. Well, now we get the reason why. You have nam Sabini in sanistris et ornamenta et scuta gesserunt. Okay, because or for the Sabines, they gesserunt, they wore in sanistris on their left arms, not only ornamenta, right? So they wore both ornamenta et scuta, both decorations and their shields. Okay. So remember, she had Tarpeia had said, "I want what you're wearing on your left arm." Well, turns out she wasn't clear enough because they have gold bracelets, but they're also carrying weapon shields, and they chuck their shields at her. You might be wondering why. It's because she's a traitor, right? You can't trust a traitor. So they use her to get in the city, and then they kill her, which is the next line. You have Tarpeia scutis oppressa cecide. Okay, so Tarpeia oppressa, right? Cecide is really the main verb here. So Tarpeia, she fell. Oppressa is your perfect passive participle, having been crushed, right, by the shield, scutis. So having been crushed by the shield, Tarpeia fell, right? So they kill her by throwing their shields at her. This is the fate of the famous traitor Tarpeia. Then you have ab illo tempore ei qui patriam tradiderant de Capitolio dejecti sunt. So from that time, ab illo tempore, right? From that time on is really what it means. Eiqui, those who, it's plural. So those who tradiderant, had handed over, had betrayed is probably a better way to say it. Who betrayed or had betrayed the patrium, the fatherland, right? Meaning betrayed Rome. Dejecti sunt, they were thrown down de Capitolio, from the Capitoline Hill. Okay, so they get chucked off the hill as punishment. This is the famous punishment for traitors to the Roman state. Ea pars Capitoli appellator mons Tarpeias. So that part of the Capitoline Hill, right, Capitoli, was called appellator mons Tarpeias, the Tarpeian rock. This is the famous Tarpeian rock. You might have heard of the famous spot, which you actually can see. I believe it's still there, and you can look it up. You'll see pictures. But it's basically the side of the hill, right? So the Capitoline's up on a hill. It's a pretty decent drop, and this is where, right, according to tradition, if you were a traitor, the Romans would bring you up there, and toss you off the cliff, right? And you fall to your death. That all happens because of Tarpeia, and she gives her name to this spot, right? So the story of Tarpeia is an unfortunate one because it is the story of being a traitor, right? But you can feel bad for her a little bit. Of course, she didn't think she was going to get crushed to death by shields. But again, in this time, you can't really trust a traitor, because the idea is if she betrayed her own people, what would stop her from betraying you, right? That's how the Sabines kind of view it. So this is a continuation in the story, right? It comes right after Romulus and taking the Sabine women. Hopefully it wasn't too bad for you to read. You had a pretty nice little mix again, a few perfect passive participles, some present participles mixed in there, and I think at least one future participle as well. So we're starting to see them in context. So keep that in mind as you read. You want to see these participles in action so you can understand how they work. And hopefully you were able to get through this without too much trouble. If you have any questions at all, you're unsure on anything, of course, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to help you. But your end goal, again, is to be able to read through this entire thing without needing any help. That's always the sign that you're ready to move on. Good luck.